I'm honestly, got it. I'm honestly not expecting a huge number of people, but just so you know that we decided to do the live stream just in case we had 3 trustees at one point. We just announced these board meetings. So, yeah, so it's all good, but just want to give a minute in case somebody does show up. Hey, Ryan, our foundation board member from Eastman, that's Tanya Matthews.
It is, oh shoot.
She's former because now she has a successor.
Right.
Eastman, right.
And I'm gonna find her name real quick. I'm going blank.
I understand. Yeah, she's brand new. So that's all good. Yeah, I just want to have a quick conversation about that. So let's get together.
Let's see. Barbara Truman.
Yeah. So I'll make sure we're on the same page. Morning, Jonathan.
Morning.
All right. Jonathan, I was telling everyone I don't expect these to be heavily populated, but I know there are some takers at some of the other ones, particularly the evening one on Wednesday. But I just wanted to give this a minute before we get started, just in case someone's joining us a little late.
Well, I appreciate you offering several different time slots.
I thought it was about the only thing we could do, really. I mean, we got so many different people and so many different geographic locations and timeframes that, this would really be the way to go. Plus, it never hurts for us to kind of, go through the same thing several times to make sure that we're getting it right.
Get your story straight.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll be in the museum, I hope, on Friday, but I was hoping to work in the collection. So that's why I'm taking this opportunity rather than being there in person.
No, you don't want to spend your time on this. Looks like Tom's joined us. That's awesome.
Yep, I'm here.
And Tom, thank you so much again for Friday. It looks like it certainly paid dividends.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it was a good group that joined us in the library. We had a nice conversation, and I think there were a couple of new folks in the crowd. So
sure. Okay.
We'll do it again in November.
All right. Well, at this moment, we open it up to the board. We open it to selected foundation board members and some of our community partners, particularly those associated with WAC. Don't know who's going to participate overall, but right now we've got Tom Benzing and Art Evans from the Board of Trustees. So this is live streamed, even though it's not an official board meeting as far as the number of trustees go, but we're just being as transparent as possible. So, and as you both know, we're going to be running the same meeting again on Wednesday evening. We've got some takers for that. And then let me see, that's tomorrow, and then Friday morning as well, or Friday at noon, I think it was. So we're just going to try to do our best to kind of keep information flowing so people understand where we're going in the detailed design process. Also, since we're talking specifically about building right now, this is the early phase of detailed design. We call it schematics. And it's basically to review the scope of the project and ensure we're all on the same page with that. But then most importantly is to get a new hard cost estimate. That's really what the objective is here. So as we show some of the diagrams and so forth, and Tom, I know you're already well aware of this, that these diagrams are not meant to be set in stone, but we also, as of the final design meeting this coming Monday, when we're done with that, we really don't want to be going back and being like, well, we enjoyed the 2-floor museum. We actually want a 3-floor museum. If we do that, it's going to incur costs to us. It's going to lengthen the timeline, send the architect to go back literally to the drawing board. So we just need to settle things in terms of some of the major concepts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I got a few different diagrams pulled up here. So oh boy. All right, so let me just kind of clear this diagram right here. So we're going to start with the outside of the building, and right now the outside of the building is going to determine cost. It's not only that, but it's also various aspects of the landscape and so forth. So Art, what you're looking at is if you were standing in the South River, somewhat elevated, and you were looking straight at our lot, this is kind of the look that they're going with right now. But as you see, it's quite cartoonish. It is really just a matter of this point to kind of get a building style and a massing that can be used to derive a hard cost estimate. We shouldn't be looking too closely at the details at this point, such as materials and so forth. But let me walk through what their thinking is to date. So if we look, and if you follow my cursor, we have this picture of the Blue Ridge here. The architect used these mountains here, the green in the foreground, blue in the background, as sort of a stylistic means to inspire a building design. So what you see here is this kind of blue accent with this green accent on kind of standard masonry. And this is something that I think the group that originally looked at this thought, was attractive. The coloration in the lower left here is brought on by steel panels that these, kind of create sort of a shimmering sort of effect. And so this is, again, this is not a written in stone idea, but it's to give us a general idea as to where they're going. So if we just kind of walk through a few of the diagrams behind the building here in the upper left, that's Arch Avenue. In the area here in front of the parking, it is, well, actually the way this is taken, this is the parking area here, but further off the chart, that's where Main Street is. So again, the corner of Arch and Main. So we're talking about a 2-level situation that includes an outdoor terrace, which was something we had been considering before, but it was something that seemed to get some traction. It's going to have rooftop mechanicals, and that's something that we feel, especially in Monday's meeting, that we can talk about making sure that we have the opportunity to surround this with green space. That is to have some kind of rooftop garden, either in the first or maybe a second or third phase of the building's life over time. One thing that we noted was a disadvantage of this design was the second floor view being lost. In other words, if you go to this, this is essentially the roof of the first floor. If you go to this outdoor terrace, you lose some of your view shed. So that would mean that people, to get the proper view shed that we were talking about during pre-planning, would be this area here around the rooftop mechanicals and so forth. So we're going to be, we challenged them on that. We're going to come back on Monday with some more discussion of that and see if there isn't some kind of elegant solution for that. What you see in the back here to the lower right, it's kind of more of the staffing area, a place to the far right, which would be a proposed area for a loading dock and so forth, a small lot for, say, a state vehicle, maybe the museum employees and so forth. They have designed here in this little space right here, kind of a phase 2, another outdoor terrace, should we want to go that direction. But what I do like about their design work is that they're talking about the future. What do you want to do in the future? Not just what we want to do when we open up, in 3 or 4 years. And Art and Tom, if I go too fast and you want to stop and ask questions, please feel free. Here's just a ground level view. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly to be respectful of people's times. This is the Broad Street Bridge. So you're kind of looking out at the very north end of the South River Preserve. Art, I don't know the last time you've been on the Greenway here, but to our left is the existing Greenway, maybe a mile and a half. It's a nice walk along the river. To the right, they just opened up the next leg of it. So the community is investing in their Greenway very nicely. Again, sort of a view from the river showing its relative location. The back of house, this is Arch Avenue right here, Main Street in front of us. And we're getting a little repetitive here. This shows one kind of concept of some general parking. This is not the final layout. I know Jonathan is working with DGS. They had given him a number of 81 parking spaces, which really takes up a vast majority of the lot, which is fine if that's what Richmond wants. We just don't understand where that 81 came from. We don't know if that's influenced by existing parking areas, the size of the lot, the size of the building, size of the proposed staff. I don't know. So we're trying to get some details on that. So there's more to come. So kind of an aerial view showing right here at the top of the building, showing the kind of rooftop mechanicals and so forth. This is a secondary rooftop mechanical, this green square right here. And the reason they have that is at this point, sort of a, just thinking ahead, in case there's more that's needed, but they wanted to have the concept in mind that we're thinking ahead, and some other views of it. Let me go back to my share screen here.
Joe, can I make one comment about the parking? Because that is a question that's coming up regularly.
Okay. Want me to bring that back up?
Yeah, if you could just do that overhead shot. So we said, I think is it 81 or 89 spaces?
Yeah, it's
in this design.
80 something. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know what the existing lot holds, but I'm getting a lot of feedback on, what are we going to do when we have an event and we need all that parking that we use, down there by the river. And I know that the city, I think you mentioned it, the city did a study on parking. Do we have a copy of that?
I do in my files. So I'll share that.
Yeah, I would appreciate that because I'd like to be able to answer that question well.
Yeah, and what we have here is a perception issue. Everyone sees this as, whatever it is, 120 parking spots or whatever the number is, and they really do get hung up on that. Whereas if you go to a major urban city and you go to their museums, just go to VMFA, and you're not going to be parking any closer to the front entrance than you would here if you don't park on this lot. Right.
I agree. But what people often bring up is Charlottesville and how difficult it is now to park in Charlottesville. And that's why they come over to Waynesboro, because they can find a place to get close to wherever they want to do their business.
Yeah, again, I think it's a perception issue. So
it absolutely is, but it's a perception we need to make sure we can respond to.
Agreed. 100%. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on these slides, Tom?
No.
Okay. Let me read through these. Does it really have me only open up one of these at a time? I'm not sure why I'm only getting one of these. I have several opened up on my screen. Oh, here they are. They're in tabs. So Art, what they did, I wanted to show everyone how they got from point A to point B. The first thing they did was they set up a flow diagram, and you see the purple here represents the major exhibit spaces. You'll see archaeology's missing because this is essentially a typo here where there's theater connections together. This should be either theater or connections plus archaeology. So I just want to make sure that's pointed out. They had that, our classrooms, our lab space, lab storage, and so forth, plus some general back of house. And then the yellow is going to be sort of your general public areas, which includes restrooms, museum shop, the lobby, which also includes some exhibits and so forth. So they put this together to kind of look at a flow. So to connect people from galleries to classrooms to back of house to the laboratory and so forth. And what they do with that is they create these stacking diagrams. You see, this is option A, OPA, right? So what they do is they start kind of, pushing these around, these blocks. And this is how they come up with this is level 1, level 2, and then the mechanicals on the roof. So we were then able to kind of look at these and see what the different flows would look like. So they walked us through 3 that they thought made sense to them. And then from that, they make, again, these massing die. I want to kind of go to one that makes a little more sense. Why does it keep going? There we go. Oh, that was the different options. So here's one of the options. You can begin to see that as they take the flow diagrams, turn it into these boxes, put it together, and make a massing diagram like this, you can see how that begins to influence the building design. So the design that we saw was not just, them just starting putting pencil to paper and drawing lines and arcs and stuff like that. It basically comes from this. And so this is basically showing their work. Again, the three different options that they would come up with in terms of a proper flow through the building that includes everything from back of house to front of house. So then what they do at that point, again, to get us closer to what we saw before, is they kind of begin to skin the building. So you can see here again, this ramp that goes up to the second floor terrace, the main entrance to the museum here being somewhat of a covered space, the rooftop mechanicals and so forth. if there's something I skipped through too fast, please yell out. This is Arch Avenue. This is the rear of the building. So again, this is just kind of showing their work. And then as far as the inside goes, I'm going to skip through some of this. This is really kind of hard to read on these things. These basically show you kind of two-dimensional looks, and we've begun to talk a lot about this with them. So we like a lot of what we see here. So this is the first floor. Just for comparison's sake, this is bigger than 2 halls of ancient life here, right? This area here is about half the size of our existing temporary gallery that we have here at the museum, right? All this is lobby and stuff. We definitely want to shrink the store. And talking about where early childhood exhibits go, there's been a lot of talk about making sure that that comes somewhere near the front of the building, because we feel there'd be a lot of repeat visitation specifically for the early childhood area. So the idea of putting that closer to the building was front of the building was appealing. And then lastly, this would be the second floor. Here's our laboratory here. This is Broad Street over here. We didn't like it being so hidden over here. So what we've proposed to them is to move the laboratory over here to more of kind of a part of the main flow of traffic. And then this again at 2,800 square feet, this is a bit smaller than the Hall of Ancient Life right here. So this would actually make this a smaller gallery, which we're fine with. You know, we think that that's strategically has got some benefit to it. And then repurposing the space over here from moving the laboratory to making this a smaller exhibit gallery, which again, for us is an appealing concept. Okay. So the laboratory would be glassed in. It would also have opportunities for outside windows here and so forth. And that would include a 170-foot storage area specific for laboratory or academic activities. And then down here, the light blue represents classrooms. We're still sort of in discussion about this, but we posed the question, do we have 3 classrooms here because we have 3 classrooms at Starling Avenue? If that's the answer, then that's not a good answer. We should be picking the number of classrooms and the size of the classrooms based upon our goals up in Waynesboro. So we're going to continue that discussion on Monday. Let's put it this way, there's overwhelming consensus that yes, we have to have classrooms. Okay. So that was the easy decision. Now it's going to be more about the number of classrooms and their arrangement. So that's going to be part of the agenda on Monday.
For the lab space, is the intended use for that in conjunction with the classrooms, or are these for professionals and university students that are in the area?
Yeah, good question. It's more towards the latter, Art. The classrooms will have, at least one of them will have, the plumbing and fume hood capabilities to do hands-on science. It's not that we couldn't somehow connect these programmatically, just like we do here on Starling Avenue. But
why not? If that's the case, why not just have 2 classrooms that are equipped as labs as well? You've got the benches, you've got the sinks, and if you think you need a fume hood, to me that sounds kind of expensive unless you're targeting, upper level students. I
like that idea, and in the end, we do have a kind of a subcommittee that's focusing on classrooms. So Christy is well aware of what's going here. We're going to get direct input from here about what those capabilities are. Honestly, I'm just keeping fume hood on the plate because it was something that was brought up in the early discussions as we talked with Christy about programming. You're right, Art. At least I think this is what you're getting at, that in the classrooms downstairs at Starling Avenue here, the fume hood is not a well-used piece of equipment. So you're right. It might be something that we want to maybe invest in something else.
Well, and I would agree, not knowing exactly who the target audience is, but it seems to me it's all going to be geared toward younger students, in which case I don't think a lab hood is going to be used all that much. And equipping each classroom, even if it means having one less classroom than shown here, but equipping each room with plumbing, so there's sinks and benches and all that kind of thing, then you're all set. Then you've got that space that's currently set aside for lab space for something else.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll continue to bandy that about. One thing that you bring up an interesting point, Art, we want to make sure all these spaces are as flexible as possible. So we know for a fact that the classrooms here at VMNH are well used, but not always used, but they're really strategically not set up, in terms of what's inside of them and so forth, to be used flexibly. We put other programming in there, whether it's a Rotary Club or Master Naturalists, but at the same time too, these are classrooms that are made to be classrooms full time. So if we can think of something like, one thing I thought of that I would just like to explore right now, what we have is 3 classrooms with removable walls dividing each other. So you can have 1, 2, or 3 classrooms. So that's a good idea. But what if we remove this wall here and made this added public gallery space separated with an exterior removable wall? So the folding kind of, structure. So that way, if we rented out the classrooms, which have, a nice view of the South River Preserve and stuff through their windows, right? This would be kind of a key rental place. If we make this flexible enough, then people can spill out into a second floor rental opportunity for, say, corporate patrons, receptions, anything like that. And they would still have access to the rest of the museum, such as going out onto this second floor terrace. So the main event spaces, I would see it would be kind of this kind of whole floor here when it's not being used for classrooms. And I think could be an interesting revenue generator because, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but as long as I've been in going to Waynesboro, people do talk about how rental opportunities, especially kind of interesting rental opportunities, are not very common.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I agree with the discussion about really carefully thinking about the classroom space and making it flexible. I also agree with the comment about the fume hood. We have fume hoods in our labs, and this is a college lab, and they rarely get used. So I think we've gone to such attention to safe practices in the labs. We've kind of gotten away from fume hoods.
Okay.
So I wouldn't want to see that just filled up with as a storage space.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in my preliminary conversations with Christy, I just think she's echoing what you're both saying about such capabilities.
I think flexibility is a good idea, but I would caution the use of a partition to separate the rooms. I think any of us that have either taught a class in 2 rooms that are separated only by a partition that are occupied, or have attended a class or a program in such a space, it doesn't work very well. I mean, it's very distracting. So I think that we're really looking at, unless there's a hard plan to utilize 3 spaces, I think we really need to look at setting up 2 spaces. One of them might be geared more toward lab activities. One of them might be geared more toward your typical classroom setting, and have a hard wall in between them, because if they're both occupied at the same time, that affords each space some privacy, which you're not going to have with a partition. And I can't tell you how many spaces I've been in where the partition eventually craps out. It's just, anyway, just off the top of my head.
Now, you're the first person to have brought that up. So, we have the partition downstairs in the first 2 classrooms. And I definitely want to run your comments by Christy, because that has not been brought up. But it could be that's just part of the culture, because they do it every day. They might not see it as a concern. You know what I'm saying?
Well, with younger classes, with little kids, I mean, it's just sort of contained pandemonium. So that's just acceptable. But if you're working with elementary schools, older students or high school students, I think it's a different dynamic that you need to have in place. But for younger children, yeah, I don't see why that would be as big a concern. But if we're really looking at flexibility in space and dealing with different audiences, I think it's worth considering.
All right.
And I agree, we're kind of diving deep on the classroom right now, but what's currently labeled as classroom storage perhaps that and slightly expanded could be the laboratory, because we're not losing any opportunity for view there. One of the things I think about is the opportunity cost of placing the classroom in a place where the best views are and then it not getting used. So again, I think the window starts where the overhang is with the dotted line.
Yes, sir.
So if it's the classroom storage area, that's the lab, and then adjacent to that is, like Art is saying, a hard wall that separates it from a more traditional looking classroom space that could perhaps be flexed into the remainder of the space, which is exhibitry in the case of an event, let's say. That would make sense to me.
I like this thinking because, I think what they did with the classroom, storage, restroom, the light blue area there, even the laboratory for that matter, I think it's all very conventional. And, we're not going to have the biggest museum. We need to make sure that it's maximally benefiting as best we can the public who are coming in to basically pay our bills. So I think we ought to challenge them to come up with some kind of elegant solution that gives us what we need, and at the same time too, is effective. So I think these are all good. I'm going to make sure to have these notes for next Monday's meeting. In fact, I'm going to advance all from the 3 Zoom meetings. I'll advance comments that I think they need to at least start thinking through before Monday's meeting, so we can be sure to kind of cover these concerns. So
Yeah, I like the idea of incorporating the classroom space that's adjacent to the future roof terraces, having the potential for being a multi-purpose room. So yeah, that's definitely something to think about when finalizing that space. It could either serve as a classroom, or it could be served as an indoor staging area or reception area that's adjacent to the terrace.
I think that would be great. I think it would enhance everything from being, a unique classroom. And that's what we're looking for. When you put kids down in our classroom, they don't know that they're in a museum, right? They're in any room, anywhere, once you close the doors. So by having this connection with the terrace space, I could see us eliminating that while also having kind of, again, expanded rental opportunities.
Well, and it also opens up the opportunity for nighttime stuff too. I mean, I have no idea what's out there when you stand out there, but you could have stargazing, you could, I don't know, do some sort of outdoor programming, put up a couple of black lights, and it's right there next to the classroom, and you could go back and forth. So that would increase the flexibility of the space.
Yeah, incidentally, I mean, this terrace would be in full view of the South River. So if you blacklighted things, you'd definitely be getting your aquatics coming in.
Well, that's something that we're getting way off in the weeds here, but that's something to keep in mind too, with exterior lights being adjacent to the river like that. If the lights are running certain times of the year and all night long, which I hope they're not, you're going to have piles of bugs and other critters around too. But that's another discussion.
It is another discussion, but I will say it already came up because I know you brought that up at a board meeting, I believe, Art. And sure enough, they're already aware of that. That is part. We're not going for lead. We are going for lead equivalence. So the state makes us get a certain level of lead equivalence. But again, we're not following that lead protocol. So one of them is ensuring that you've got no what am I trying to say? Dark sky pollution, and also looking at the attraction of nighttime insects and migrating birds and bats.
Great.
So that's something that they're going to be building into this to ensure that we get those certifications.
And that's something to talk about too. Once the building is open to the public, I think those are selling points about getting the public to think about those things as we go forward, establishing buildings and building residential areas and commercial sites and that sort of thing, to get people thinking about that. And this could be a real showcase for that.
Awesome. I like it.
While we're still on this view, I did want to mention I like the position of the catering kitchen. And I don't know whether we've had any interaction with potential caterers, but is that size appropriate for maybe the size of event that we think might be hosted in the flexible space, perhaps with the future roof terrace included? I don't know. I'm just asking that question.
We have not talked to a caterer, but I know 250 is pretty sizable. So let me see what ours is.
Well, just in case, I think you've got that potentially unused lab space in the corner too that could easily be incorporated in the classrooms or elsewhere. That may be something that could serve another purpose entirely. And if a catering kitchen is deemed something essential, then, you know, that's an option if you need a larger space for that activity.
Right. Well, just for comparison's sake, our catering kitchen, it's an odd shaped space. So this is approximate, but it's about 225. In fact, I think it's smaller because of the dog leg that we have in it. So this one being 250, as it's currently laid out, is larger than the one that we have.
Okay.
And we've got all the sinks, the dishwasher, the heating ovens, ice machine, storage, prep table, all that stuff. So yeah.
And do you know offhand how many you've had at an event, maybe the largest event you've had catered?
Definitely we've done with plated serving around 100. Ryan, can you think of anything that was bigger than that? Like, what about the initial gala that you guys threw?
I would say anywhere from 250 to 300 has been the largest. And I will say a lot of the caterers are fairly self-contained. So they don't need a large space based on the input we've gotten for the catering kitchen. It's more of a staging area.
Well, Ryan, being as efficient as always, has texted me the blueprints of the building that shows the catering kitchen, and my estimate is a little small. So we'll double check on the size and see exactly what can go in it. And maybe we can share it with a couple of caterers and see if they have suggestions. Okay. Thanks, Ryan.
Yep.
All right. So again, the purpose of this was to kind of bring it from point A to point B, as far as taking us from the pre-planning study with the work that's been done so far to getting this final conceptual drawing. Now, when we move to schematics in January, after we've submitted our cost estimate to Richmond, we still have opportunity to move things around. Again, we can't do giant things. We can't like say, well, let's make another floor, or let's make a basement, or, you know, let's add a canopy walk. You know, it's going to be a little late for that, but we're going to continue at this upcoming meeting, asking them these hard questions. And then when it comes down to getting that cost estimate, we'll move into schematics, but then we're going to continue to tweak everything from layout to use, switching spaces around, not spaces, but, you know, maybe borrowing space from one area and adding to another. So that's all going to be part of the upcoming process. And before we get too far into that, after we continue to tweak it, we do owe Richmond another cost analysis sometime in 2023 before the final product is completed at the end of the year. So that's what I have. Art, did I leave any? You're a good one to kind of start with here. I just want to make sure. Do you see any like holes that I've left in terms of presenting the walkthrough of the work done so far?
I don't. The only thing that isn't clear to me is the amount of windows, exterior windows that are going to be part of the design. I don't see any of that in the initial drawings. Is that something that comes later?
Yeah, that will definitely come later. And we have preached all along that there are places that windows will be appropriate. Right now, we're talking about the classrooms because that'll be a multi-use space and so forth. We've always had windows within the working laboratory, should that still continue with its original concept. And then if I go to the first floor, this area here in the yellow, and in fact, in the other diagrams, you can see that that window kind of coming into here so people can see from the street the activity that's going on within. So this area, the green over here, this is kind of staff back of house. So, you know, that's why there's this dotted line here. That's basically a window shade and so forth. But all these areas where we have exhibits and so forth, the glazing will be avoided.
Glazing.
Glazing, yeah, windows, anything transparent that could let in sunlight.
Will be avoided for the exhibit spaces.
Yes,
Yes.
right.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, UV is kind of hard on things.
yeah, it is. And we've spent the last 10 years covering up windows in Starling Avenue, so we don't want to do the same thing here.
Okay.
So we recognize it's a very attractive architectural feature, but I mean, we're not here to win prizes on our design. If we do, that's great. We'll high five. But the first thing is to have an effective public experience to attract people so we can meet mission.
Well, thanks, Joe. I appreciate helping me bring me up to speed. I feel like I've been out of the fold for a while.
All right. Well, we're going to continue to share and give people updates. Tom, do you have anything else that you'd like to add? Anything that you saw maybe we may have missed or glazed over too fast? Glazed over.
No, I think you did a good job. I did notice in the panels that you provided to me for the library
Yes.
that the Early Childhood Learning Center is not identified.
Yeah,
And I
it's
did
not
have a-
identified here either. It's part of the overall exhibits.
Okay, because I had a specific question about that, and then I went to point to where I thought it would be, and it isn't on the diagram yet.
No, it's basically incorporated within the public exhibit space.
That's the only comment that I have, but otherwise, I think you did a nice job of walking through and collecting comments, and so
All right.
I might listen into the other ones. I may
Sure.
not. I'm just trying to be responsive to all of the comments that we're hearing, and just trying to be aware of it as best I can as the chair of the Waynesboro Advisory Committee. So.
Well, I appreciate that, and we can ask them to update the drawings, and we can update that panel too. If as of Monday, we can get a pretty good consensus on, again, from the last discussion, it was going to be here, again, very close to the kind of lobby staging area and so forth. So we can ask them to call that out.
That's fine, and no rush on that. As you know, I'm not meeting back at the library until mid-November. So.
Right. Okay. Well, things will kind of progress from there, I'm sure. All right,
Yeah.
Tom, Art, thank you so much. Appreciate you taking the time, and we'll stay in touch.
All right. I'll see you all later in the week.
See you later in the week, Art. Safe travels.
Yep.
Thanks, Tom. We'll see you later.
Okay, see ya, Joe. Bye all.